Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. As always, wherever in the world you're listening to us from and whatever platform you're listening to us on, thank you guys for the continued support, all of the great suggestions, all the comments, all the feedback, all the questions that you sent. Keep those coming. I really do appreciate those. I'm always excited to hear from you guys and look forward to continue to bring you some really awesome discussions and some really fun topics, including, which I know many of you listeners, I'm sure, are always excited to talk about, and that's getting shots up, training game-ready shooters, get the ball in the basket, and getting your guys or girls ready to put up some points in a game. And so that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to talk about the topic of kind of training game-ready shooters, talk about what's expected to, as a coach, to maybe get your shooters up to game-ready speed, talk a little bit about free throws as well. Huge, crucial element, I know, especially for those of you at the younger levels, and also talking about, things in your practices or even in training sessions that you might be able to do in order to really get those shooting numbers up and get that accuracy and efficiency up. So I'm going to dive into all of that. And of course, I don't do this alone. Very excited to be joined by the Olivet women's basketball shooting coach, a very unique title, who's going to explain what that entails here in a little bit. Very happy to be joined by Coach Jere Johnson today. Coach Jere J, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. I am so excited to be on your podcast, and anytime that a guy like me can talk hoops, I just love it.
Love it. I'm glad we're able to have you on, Coach. Let's start with your basketball journey and your coaching journey. Like I said, kind of in the beginning, you're in a very unique position, kind of a little customized position almost in a way. But talk to us about how you got there. Where's the game of basketball taking you? Where's this coaching journey taking you? And ultimately, how did you end up at this current position you're at?
Yeah, I grew up in Indiana and am back here again after a couple of stops, one in Oklahoma, one in Illinois. But I was the youngest varsity basketball coach in the state of Indiana at a small Christian high school in 1985, and really learned uh, basketball coaching from Taylor University's head coach at that time, Paul Patterson, who was a Hall of Fame coach. Many may recognize his name, but he gave me an opportunity to work with their program when I was a student at Taylor and helped get me that first job. And so had some really good success at the Christian school for 5 years, and then moved on to Indiana Wesleyan, right across the county, as an assistant coach. And we had some really good athletes there, had some success, and then ended up moving out to Oklahoma, where I coached at Oklahoma Wesleyan on the women's side. And I was fortunate to have about 4 or 5 All-Americans while I was there. And then as my kids got older, Coach, I really wanted to watch them play. And so I got involved with their high school teams as a volunteer, and was able to coach all of my kids, my 3 kids, their AAU summer teams. And so I stayed involved, and during that time is where I really started to hone in on shooting. And that really kind of became the expertise that I really like to teach, because both my boys and my daughter was a very good shooter, but both my boys were outstanding three-point shooters in high school. My youngest made 82 threes his sophomore year, and my oldest was shooting close to 60% halfway through his senior year in high school, and both are now college coaches themselves. So how I got to Olivet is a great story. My oldest son, Caleb, was finishing up managing at Indiana Wesleyan University for the women's program, and really wanted to get into coaching. And a former point guard there knew the head coach at Olivet, Coach Lauren Glenn, and said, "Hey, I have a guy that would be a great GA for you." And so the week after Indiana Wesleyan beat Olivet in the national tournament, my son's over there applying and having an interview for the graduate assistant job.
Wow.
The girls from Olivet recognized him right off, and they're like, well, "What are you doing here?" But he won them over, and he's been there for 7 years. And my youngest, once he graduated from Indiana Wesleyan, ended up being a GA and finished last year. He's now coaching at Southern Nazarene University as an assistant for the women's
Mm,
program. But through my time just spending with the program at Olivet, Coach Glenn saw that I really had a passion for shooting, and she could tell I was able to help some of their players in the first year or two, especially from the foul line. But she asked me if I would kind of direct their shooting during the summertime, and give them skills and drills to do throughout the summer. So I've been doing that the last 5, 6 years, and have really bonded with these players, and they have such a unique style at Olivet, where they shoot. Half their shots come from three, half their shots come from in the paint, and they don't shoot a lot of mid range.
okay.
Actually, they don't want to shoot any mid range. They like to push the ball and shoot a lot of threes and a lot of pressing, and their goal is to average over 100 points a game. So I am blessed to be a part of, that opportunity, especially because I live 3 hours away from campus. I live in
Yeah.
Fort Wayne, Indiana. So to be able to be over there, it's been fun.
No, that's incredible, and I mean, such a perfect fit, right, for a playing style and an offense that wants to get, a lot of shots up. They're looking to get in the triple digits. I mean, what more of a fun role to be a shooting coach for a program of that mentality, it seems.
Well, here's the joke, is when we
Hmm.
shoot 35 to 40%, Coach Glenn always says, "Hey, I'm going to give you a raise." Well, a raise of nothing is great, but whenever they shoot below that, I always get fired.
Oh
And
no.
so for
Yeah.
3 quarters on Saturday, I was getting a raise. Fourth quarter, we didn't do so well, so she told me I was fired for the fourth quarter. But when you score 127 and don't shoot well in the fourth quarter, that's still a pretty good day.
Yeah, if you can have a little bit of an off time shooting and still put up those numbers, that's still a pretty decent day, like you said. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Coach, I wanted to kind of pick your brain about something that I know is always a frequent discussion that a lot of coaches, talk about or think about when it comes to being in a program. And you have a lot of experience at, different programs yourself, and obviously you're well connected with a lot of coaches as well who uh, all have their own programs. And so one of the things, of course, coach, we always talk about, what is a culture, and what does the culture look like? How do you know if the culture is good at a particular program? How do you know if like the team is, gelling and has that team chemistry and all those intangibles that you really want a program to have? And so I was curious, coach, about how you know and how you can kind of tell when a program is together and has that strong culture versus one that maybe isn't where it needs to be quite yet.
Yeah, that's a great question, Coach. I go do a lot of recruiting. I do most of the Indiana recruiting for Coach Glenn because it's just hard for them to get over here. And I'm biased, but I think Indiana has some pretty good high school girls basketball. And I always sit across from the benches, usually in the upper deck, because I like to watch how the players interact with each other and how they interact with the coach. And you can tell pretty quick, just by watching the players interact with each other and how they support each other on and off when they come on and off the floor, and how they react to the coaches in the huddle, and when the coach is even getting on them. Um, so I use a word that I used when I coached to create culture, and the word was fat, FAT. And I would say, "Are you fat? Are you faithful?" Are you faithful to your teammates? Are you faithful to the school? Are you faithful to the coaching staff? And are you faithful to yourself as a player? Are you accountable? Are you accountable to all those levels? Because accountability is huge. There's some players
Right.
who just, well, hey, this is good for me, but you ought to be doing this and this and this. Well, that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
necessarily accountability. Um, but then, are you teachable? Is the last part of that, and you can tell pretty quick if a player's not teachable. They're not making eye contact with you. Um, they're rolling their eyes when you're trying to teach them something. In my programs growing up, that was kind of the kiss of death for a player if they're rolling their eyes at me. That meant they got to sit more beside me than when they wanted to be on the floor. But
Yeah, more than they want to, right?
um, yeah, exactly. So those are the three things that I really looked for, and you can find them pretty quickly by how teams really support each other. Um, I always try to coach kids that did not care about their stats. Now, every kid cares about their stats. Don't get me wrong, but I wanted my players to worry more about what are we doing as a team, because at
Hmm.
the end of the day, we're either going to be 1-0 or 0-1. And every one of us has ownership in that. And so a player who's just constantly worried about her own stats, or a guy who's worried about their stats, they may be problems when it comes to culture with the team.
Yeah, it's definitely like I've been in those situations, coach. I don't know if you've seen this before, but I've seen those situations where a game ends and you see a player just immediately wants to go to the scorebook and like know exactly how many points did I go up. They don't even want to care about the team meet or anything if the team's like how many points did I get or anything like that. And I'm like, oh boy, that's an interesting dynamic if a player can do that and that's accepted by a program.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been able to watch some really good games this last week, and there's a
Yeah.
team down near Richmond, Indiana, and and it's a small school, probably less
Hmm.
than 400 kids, 2A school in the state. They've got a great system. Their coach is fantastic. I think he's even been on your show, Coach Cody Dudley.
Oh yeah, he
Um,
has absolutely.
yeah, yeah, and he has created a great culture there because he's got two or three really good players. But when they come out of the game, they're really engaged in cheering on the girls on the floor,
Hmm.
coaching them up when they're on the bench, other players, and just so supportive. And you don't see that a lot of times with successful programs. A lot of times you see kids, superstars coming out of the game, they're just sitting there pouting because they're out of the game waiting to go back in. Um, those programs may be successful because they have great athletes, but at the end of the day, is their culture what they want it to be? I would say probably not.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't it's some there's going to be some adversity whether it's in that particular year or moment or something down the line and that's definitely going to be, a challenge when that adversity really does hit for sure. Um
Absolutely.
Coach, let's go ahead and jump in here and talk about concept of training game ready shooters. I want you to talk about kind of where your role kind of fits in. I know you kind of talked about it a little bit at Olivet about what your role is, but what are kind of the expectations for you in your role when it comes to working with shooters? What does that role consist of, and what is kind of the work that you're doing with the women?
Yeah, I mean, I break it down. I go over there 2 times a year specifically that we do shooting training and really player development training, and every year in the spring we walk through a series of drills that even though if they're a freshman or if they're a senior, we're doing the same thing. We're talking about form shooting. We're working on footwork, uh, hand placement on the ball, all those things. Because I was always told as a young coach, you can't change a kid's shot, especially once they get to college. I don't buy that at all. I've actually seen just the opposite. Um, we've got a young lady who's a freshman this year who just has some real follow through issues Well, she's worked her tail off, and especially from the foul line, she started out really slow, and she's hit 6 of her last 7 free throws. And so to say you can't change those things, but my role with the team there is to really find drills, especially in the summertime, that the challenges and the drills that we work on really come from the flow of what they do offensively. Like I said
Yeah.
earlier, for example, Saturday, we shot 110 shots. 55 of them were from behind the arc, and that's their goal. They met their goal. They want to shoot half their shots in a game from behind the arc. Um, made made I think 16 on Saturday, which percentage wise wasn't great. I wasn't super happy with that, but in the first quarter, I think we were 5 of 7 from three. So, I mean, you go quarter by quarter, but we really try to gear them to start from the ground and build up.
Okay.
So, for me, I always think it's footwork first. You have to know what your footwork is on any type of shot, especially from the 3-point line. Um, some of the girls like to hop into their shot. I'm not a big proponent of that. I like to step 1, 2 into a shot, and but we take the girls where they're at. If they're struggling with their footwork, well, we're going to make those minor changes, but then it builds up from there. And we talk about hand placement and getting your fingers up on the ball. So many players, when they receive a pass, they'll catch it and their fingers will be pointed away from them.
Away from it. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, if you're gonna be locked and loaded, if you're gonna load that wrist, your fingers are going to be pointed up, and we try to get in that situation, and then from there, it's really just elbow drive until you follow and finish, and we try to keep it very simple and don't try to overcomplicate things. But from there, all the shooting that we do is we want volume. We want them to get up shots. We want them to get up a lot of shots. As a college student, that's hard to do at times, but they record shots every day with the coach. Coach requires them to get X amount of free throws in and write down whatever it is. For example, she wants them to make 50 free throws a couple days before the next game. Well, she has them record how many attempts did it take you, and so they're tracking percentages based on that. We had 4 girls who took 53 attempts or less to make their 50 free throws going into Saturday's game. So we are really starting to see some great success on
Wow.
some of those little things.
So, to build on to that, Coach, when you are having a player that you work with, and like you said, you believe that players' shots can be fixed even when they get to the collegiate level. Now, when you have players who have such muscle memory and they've had the same form or the same shooting style for years and years getting up to the college level, what's that conversation like, or what's that process like to kind of, like you said, kind of make those tweaks and make those changes to those shots? Do you find that there's like a lot of buy-in right away and they get it right away? Is there like kind of a learning block because they're trying to relearn something different? How does that go, trying to change somebody's form or make those little tweaks as they get to the college level?
And that's a great question, Coach, because kids are kids. They they don't necessarily buy in right away. They don't believe you.
Hmm.
They may not necessarily trust you. But whenever I start working with a player for the first time, I sit him in a chair. I sit him in a chair about 3 to 5 feet out from the basket, and I make them put the ball on their shooting strong leg, their shooting leg. If you're right-handed, your right leg, and then they roll the ball up until their fingers are pointed up. And then we place the guide hand on. I mean, I do this with everybody. And they get in that situation, and then I have them, okay, now drive your elbow and shoot the basket. And it's interesting the amount of air balls that are shot from that level. that you think, well, I want to find out if they can really get it there.
Mm.
And and then I said, okay, now you do what you normally do, and and then they struggle with that, and so I convince kids um, that if you can get your wrist loaded and drive your elbow up through the ball and keep the ball in front and not behind your head, you're going to find great success. And they work on it. We have a progression where you stand, roll it up your leg, do the same thing, and we just build back on that. And I have seen kids buy in very, very quickly because what they do is they see the ball going in a lot more than their
Yeah.
regular shot. And when you see the ball going in more, they'll say, "Okay, I get this, and I buy
Yeah.
into this." Now, we have a kid in our conference um, who has a shot, I would say, uglier than Larry Bird's. I mean, she puts it way behind her head, um, but she's also leading the nation. She's also leading the NAIA in scoring, I believe. But
Yeah.
she's perfected her shot, and that's the thing that I try to tell all players that I work with. I work with players in our area here in Fort Wayne. You're the one who has to master your shot. I can help you fix things that you're struggling with, but you have to put the work in to master your own shot. And a lot of players just don't want to do that. They don't want to put in the time. But the kids who put in the time see great success with just the little things that we try to teach them.
Well, I imagine too that the importance of that conversation is huge and that they buy into that conversation because if they don't practice with those little adjustments or little changes that you go over them, they're just going to revert back to what their muscle memory is and what they're normally doing. So it's really important, I imagine, that to get out of that, what they were doing before, they really got to be out there a lot, getting shots in and working on those minor tweaks and changes. So that becomes their new muscle memory.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And especially at the college level with
Yeah.
the line, 3-point line farther back, um, it takes freshmen a few months to
Mm.
really get acclimated. We have a junior this year. She had a great game on Saturday, and she had to work for a couple of years, and she fought through some injuries to get to where she is now. And now her footwork is so good that when she touches it, and the farther back she is, the better she thinks she shoots. And I don't necessarily disagree with her, but she's just locked and loaded. And anytime she shoots the ball, I think it's going in. And so it's great when you see a kid grow to get to that level and have that confidence to be able to think, I'm ready to go because my footwork's good, my setup's good, and all I got to do is follow through down, and I got a great chance of making this shot.
Yeah, what a great feeling too. As a coach, I imagine to have her shooting and think, wait, like, oh, this looks great. I think all these are going to go in. Like, what a confidence boost that is. As I'm sure to be watching it and think like, oh yeah, every shot has a chance.
Yeah, well, I mean, with our shooters that we have, we've got really good shooters,
Hmm.
and then they all have different form, but we tell them if you don't believe you can make the shot, I would rather prefer you not to shoot it. Don't shoot
Mm.
just to shoot. Shoot because you believe you're going to make the shot. And I
Yeah.
think that's a big mistake. Kids think, "Hey, it's my turn to shoot," or "I'm just going to shoot because I want to shoot." Well, but if you don't think you can make the shot, and you can tell by body language pretty quick if a kid has confidence in shooting the ball, um, and I don't like discouraging kids to not shoot the ball, but if you don't believe you can make a shot, I would really work with them first on confidence that, hey, you can score, and then, get them buying in. If not, then I would say go make a layup first. Get some confidence in the game before you start chucking threes.
Yeah, I had that conversation with one of my girls just a week ago about that. I could tell she was a little bit banged up and a little bit hurt, and I think she was getting a little bit into her head about shooting too, and trying to like work through a little bit of an ankle thing with it. And for her, it's so funny that you mentioned that because I'm just remembering this conversation vividly. It took her to get a couple layups going, and then I could just literally see her body language settle down. And like, all right, there's the player I remember. But she just needed to see the ball go in a couple times, see success there, and then she felt, okay, I'm back. I'm ready to go shoot as normal.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it's a grind. I mean,
oh yeah,
it's a mental challenge. Shooting is as much mental as it is physical. And if you can believe you can make a shot, you got a pretty good chance that you're gonna score some buckets that night.
oh yeah. Coach, I know something you're real passionate about, free throws. So you alluded to
Yeah.
this a little bit earlier. So let me ask in a more specific context about the process that you use when you go to teaching free throws. Talk us through like what it is. How did this method come to be? What is it that you're working on with your players to kind of get those free throw numbers up?
Yeah, this is the biggest change for the kids who come to Olivet because a lot of them come with that weird, sometimes funky free throw routine where they bend down and get in that squat, take 5 dribbles, spin the ball, do all kinds of crazy things, and then they shoot. Um, well, my philosophy is pretty simple. I want to replicate what you do outside the free throw line. So I always ask, now, can you bend over and take 5 dribbles and spin the ball before you shoot a three-pointer? Well, no, that's ridiculous. I can't do that. So why do you do it from the foul line? And they don't have an answer. It's just something they've always practiced. So our philosophy is really simple. And I worked with my boys on this, and we really honed in is however many dribbles you take, and I only encourage players to take 1 or 2 dribbles. I was a 3 dribble guy in high school. I don't know why. I just did. But anymore, I would just take 1 dribble. So we teach them stand straight up, eyes on the basket. We actually teach to look at through the net on the backside of the net. You can always see 2 loops on the net.
Mm.
That is what I teach our players to focus in on. Find your 2 loops straight through. No matter where you're shooting on the floor, you can always see 2 loops because too many players are ball watchers when they shoot the ball. And that's a whole nother topic for discussion. But we get them to focus. You're standing straight up. You got to be in the most relaxed position. Once they've taken their dribble, we tell them to set it in a comfortable spot, but the ball cannot be down to your waist. You have to be at a 90-degree angle or better. So they're set, fingers up, and once they get there, if they're a little winded, take a deep breath. But then all we ask them to do is bend, drive your elbow, drive your just a light bend and shoot. Drive your elbow, follow through, fingers straight down. And it's as simple as that. And it's amazing how you see players relax. We had a young lady as a freshman last year. She was convinced I got to bend down. That's what I've always done.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the middle of the year, and both my boys are kind of clones of me when it comes to shooting free throws, which and they were there together. So they grabbed this young lady and said, "You're too good a shooter to be missing free throws," because she was shooting less than 50%.
Oh
So they
wow.
convinced her 1 dribble, bend and shoot. Well, she hit like 90% the rest of the year. All summer, and I'm not kidding you, all summer when we did free throw shootings of 100 or more, she was at 96% all summer.
Wow.
And she hasn't missed a free throw this year. And it's because she's relaxed at the line and she gets that her free throw needs to look like all her other perimeter shots. And she also led the nation in 3-point percentage last year as a freshman at 51%. So this kid can shoot. but she was awful from the line at the beginning of the year. But with just a minor change, and it's not a huge change for a lot of these kids. It just gets them to relax, and we simplify it to where don't make it hard for yourself. Just get it set, drive your elbow, and finish. And we've had players we had post player who started her freshman year at 40%. Last year, she was a little over 50%. She's shooting close to 80% in conference play this year. Um, and so it's just she's put in the work and
Right.
she's trusted the process. And we tell them, if you trust the process in the form, you will have success. And we've just seen, I mean, the last 4 games, we've probably shot 80% or better from the line.
Yeah, no,
So
but like that word trust, I think that's something that's come up a couple times when you're asking players to, make these changes or make these adjustments. They're going to have to, buy into what the coach is telling them. And like you said, once they start to see a little bit of success, then it'll take it off from there. But, that trust element of saying like, all right, we're gonna do it this way. We're gonna stick with it. We're gonna, stick through the process and then see it through. I mean, it sounds like it's a huge element to really seeing that success that you want out of your players.
it is. I mean, and it's great when and I know when a kid doesn't trust what I'm telling them because they're skeptical. Again, they start rolling their eyes, and
Yeah, yeah,
we have a senior point guard who, she was convinced that her way was the right way her freshman year. She started to come around her sophomore year, her junior year, really started to buy in. Well, she's shooting 90% from the line as a senior. Has only missed, I think, 3 free throws all year. And so for some, it takes more time than others. Others buy in right away and they get locked in. But it's the simplest shot you're going to take all game. No
right.
one's guarding you. And
Yeah.
you have to hit those because when you miss free throws, this as a coach. When you miss free throws, all it does is give the other team hope that they can come back when, especially late in games when the game's tight.
When the game's tight,
So
yeah, yeah. And I've seen, and you have too, many situations where all of a sudden miss free throw, all of a sudden body language is bad. They miss another one. Now they're getting going out on transition on the other end because the body language is bad after another missed free throw, and all of a sudden what should
yeah,
have been easy 2 points, now all of a sudden they're getting a run out on you, transition free or a layup on you, and when you were the one shooting the free throw. Yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
so free throws are a very important part of the game, and too many players just don't work at it enough. And that's, again, that's on the player. I mean, we as coaches, you don't always have time in practice to get the amount of free throws, especially game type free throws when you're tired and your legs.
yep, yep.
Um, here's the last thing I'll talk about with free throws is, when players like to bend over and take their dribbles and kind of sit in their squat before they shoot. Um, I always ask kids, are you going to have the same lift in the fourth quarter as you do in the first quarter by squatting down and bending down? Well, the answer is always no. So I'm like, then why do you do that? 'Cause don't you want to make your free throws in the fourth quarter? Well, yeah. Well, then let's get consistent throughout the whole game, even though you thinking I am consistent, but you're not going to have the same lift physically as you do in the first quarter. So it's not going to be the same. But if you're
Yeah.
standing straight up and just do that normal process, you will be fine every free throw you shoot, no matter what time you shoot it in a game.
And it's as we kind of went back to what we said earlier, when that light bulb hits and like, wait, oh, that makes sense, and then they could like see the gears turning and see that progress made. I mean, what a gratifying feeling, especially as when it does pay off. So no, I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting though to hear you talk about it because I feel like there's so much about the free throw that has just been for players just, oh, I've just always done it this way. I don't even really think about why I'm, setting myself up this way or taking 5 dribbles, squatting the way I am. It's just something that, in the overall arc of their game or scope of their game, they're probably not thinking about much. But like You and I both know, and we've talked about, it's like you think about how many free throw attempts some of these players get up in a game and how much of their scoring output can come from the free throw line. It's like, yeah, this is probably something that demands quite a bit of attention because it's very crucial and a very important part of getting buckets up and getting points on the board.
Oh yeah, every player needs to work on their free throws, but the two positions that need to be at the line as much as they can outside of practice, point guards and post players,
Hmm.
or those who really attack the rim well. I mean, you have those who just love to attack the rim, and they love to get fouled. I mean, they're looking for contact. They're running
Yeah,
into
yeah,
people trying to get to the rim.
yeah, and
But
they
your
get
point guard,
excited
your
when they get it.
oh yeah, your point guards and post players have to spend time uh, really shooting layups. I mean, shooting free throws. I mean, they
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to get in the gym, and and I always say, there's no equity when it comes to how many free throws you shoot. Do y'all have to shoot 100? Well, you probably need to shoot 200 because you're going to be at the line twice as much as some of your other teammates.
Yeah.
So get in there, get the work done. And, um, you know, I had a player Saturday tell me, hey, Jerry J, I increased my streak. I'm now at 82. Man, that's great. You know, your next goal's 100. I know that's what I'm going to shoot for. And so when you have a mindset of a growth mindset of wanting to get better, you're going to make more shots. You're going to make more free throws. And,
Hmm.
and that's not every kid has that. And, that's where coaches have to really encourage, um, because when you make free throws, that's that really helps a kid to feel successful
Oh yeah, oh
because
yeah.
it's a tough shot for a lot. It's a tough shot for a lot of players because they feel the pressure.
Yeah, and I've been through experiences, and I'm sure other coaches listening have too, where you could almost see players, and I've seen it a lot with guards too, who kind of pull up on their layups or try to avoid contact. And I think part of it also is they don't want to shoot free throws, and so they'll put themselves in these situations where they're not going strong up to the basket, and then they take a bad shot, which ends up going the other way anyway. Whereas, if they went up into contact, were expecting contact, they get fouled, they shoot free throws, changes things completely. But, you can almost kind of see the players who either don't want that contact or they just don't want to end up shooting free throws because maybe they're not confident as free throw shooters, and then that ends up potentially creating a lot more issues when they're doing wild shots or turning the ball over or getting the paint and don't know what to do from there, all because they're not wanting to get through that contact and potentially have to go to the line.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love a player who loves to go to the foul line because they just when they're confident, they know they're going to knock them down. And
Hmm.
we do a lot of free throw games, and we do a lot of all of our shooting challenges. And coach, I'll email you all the shooting challenges that we do and the games and drills that we do for
Yeah,
our,
love it.
our our Tiger Ball shooters. We call the program over there at Olivet Nazarene, we call it Tiger Ball because of their culture and their system of play. But we have a lot of fun free throw games that really can help a player get better.
Awesome. No, I would love that. That'd be fantastic, Coach. Appreciate it. I want to ask you, Coach, about how do you think us coaches, whether it's at high school, middle school level, even younger than that, I'm going to just say younger levels, and I'll let you interpret that question however which way you would want. But what can coaches at the younger levels be doing to really, get their shooters trained the right way or ready for, whatever their next level of basketball is going to be? And, kind of in a general sense, how do you tell or how can you tell when a player comes into the program that, okay, they've been taught shooting well or they've really got, some good fundamentals under them?
Yeah, uh, I've been around coaching for close to 40 years now, and I can watch a kid shoot for about 2 minutes and see very quickly what kind of shooter they are. And here's one of the key indicators. When a kid comes into the gym, doesn't matter how old they are, when they pull the ball off the rack, what's the first shot they shoot? 90% of the kids today will go, they might have headphones in or earbuds in and they're listening to whatever, and they're just going to start chucking from the 3-point line. And they're thinking, man, I'm having a bad day. I'm having an awful shooting day. And I would probably say you're probably gonna, because you have not prepared yourself properly. Um, my encouragement to coaches at every level is teach your players to warm up properly when they have the time. And there's there's always time to warm up properly. Maybe not so much before a varsity game, but you can always get in before the JV game or between halftime of the JV game. A lot of coaches let their kids shoot. Start in close, start around the basket, do your form shooting. Um, I this is the simple thing that I always taught my boys is you start at the blocks, you make 5 shots on, you use your right hand on the right, left hand on left. You make 5 shots from the blocks off the backboard, and then you make shots from each of the hash marks up the foul line. You don't go to the next hash until you make it from that spot. You work your way back all the way up from the elbows. You got to make shots from the elbows. Then you got to make 2 free throws in a row. And then from there, that's going to be about 20 to 25 shots that they've taken. Then from there, you can start to back up and build out and start shooting your threes. But they're going to make 15 shots, well, more than that, probably 20 to 25 shots before they start free shooting. Um, would that give a kid success? I think so. To see the ball go in that many times before they're allowed to really start free shooting versus the kid who just comes in and pulls the ball off and misses their first 15 threes and think, I'm going to have a crappy night. Well, let's start mentally preparing yourself by seeing yourself make shots first. Start in close, build yourself out, and then go from there. That's my simple philosophy that I would tell any coach. Um, and then, you start working with kids if they have footwork issues or form issues, but it all starts 5 feet from the basket.
5 feet, yeah.
And then you build your way out. Um, you watch Instagram, you watch X, you watch YouTube videos. You can find Steph Curry, you can find Caitlin Clark, you can find Kelsey Plum, you can find Anthony Edwards. They all start in close and build their way out when they warm up and shoot. So they've put in the work, and it's not something new to basketball. Every great shooter. I just watched an old Pete Maravich video with his dad. People are going to be
Yeah, yeah.
like, "Who? Who?" Well, the greatest scorer in college basketball history, Pete Maravich. Well, his dad made him start in close, and when Pete was at the pro level, he started in close and built his way out. And I think he was a pretty good basketball player
Did pretty
back
all
in
right
the
for
day.
himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I think you brought up a point, and I'm sure a lot of listeners, you kind of know this, right? With the expansion of the 3-point game and everything like that, like how much that's attracted our players to be shooting from there. But I'm sure you see this and know this, coach, too, right? These kids at a young age who try to do that when they just simply don't have the strength or the ability to do that, and are completely wrecking their form or not developing any good form. Whereas, like you said, they could be working in from 5 feet out and developing good mechanics, and eventually when they get up to it, then they'll be able to be able to shoot from outside once they literally grow into it and build up to it. But yeah, yeah, definitely, like you said, right? Like how does that look from 5 feet out and then work your way out versus just walking in the gym and shooting?
Well, we have a drill that we call build out shooting, where you start at the rim. You shoot, make a shot, take 2 steps back. If you make that shot, if you miss 2 shots in a row, you got to start over. Because if you can't make
Mm,
shots as you continue back, there's no reason for you to continue back by missing
continue back,
shots.
yeah.
So you start and you if you continue to make shots, you back up 2 steps. Well, we do that until we go 2 steps beyond the 3 point line. Well, then you go to another location. I like to teach from the five perimeter spots, both corners, both wings, top of the key. Um, if you can work those five spots, anything in between, you're going to be fine with. Um, here's a teaching point that I always taught younger players and even older players is if your elbow has to be pushed behind your back, when you shoot the ball, if you put that ball in your hip pocket and your elbow goes behind your back to get it to the rim, it's too far of a shot for you to shoot. Because
I like that.
ends up happening for a lot of kids is they end up turning their shoulders. It
Right.
becomes more of a push. If you can't keep your elbow to your side or in front and drive your elbow up, it's too far of a shot. And so I've always had this love-hate relationship with the 3 point line with younger kids. If you have the strength to get it there and shoot it properly, I'd let you shoot it. But if you have to turn your body and contort your body and lead with the wrong foot, um,
Right.
when you're shooting, I would tell kids, I don't want you to shoot that shot. Well, you don't want me to make a three? It's not that. I just don't think you can make a three if you shoot like that. You might make 1 out of 50, but
One out of
I don't
50.
think that's not very good.
Yeah,
Uh,
we don't want those numbers.
no, and so, but I mean, it's hard to convince a kid that because that line is it's you know I didn't shoot a 3 pointer in high school, not because I wasn't allowed. It's because the line didn't come for 5 more years. I graduated in 1982. Now, 90% of my shots were probably from behind the arc, but I prepared myself as a young kid to be able to back up and shoot farther back. Um, Kids don't necessarily always work on their form, and it takes
Hmm.
coaches like us who remind them that if you want to be a better shooter, it starts with good footwork, good form, good follow through, and a lot of practice.
Yeah, it's a grind, right? It's a process for sure. Like there's no
Yeah.
overnight solutions for great shooters, though. Boy, wouldn't that be something if there was?
Well, and here's the other thing too, coach. It's got to be fun.
Oh yeah.
If they're not having fun and being creative, I mean, I grew up in the era of no social media, no, you know, posting on TikTok, hey, this is my workout today. You know, I had chalk and I wrote on the sidewalk or I wrote on the walls, keeping score in my head and announcing my own games when I shot. I made it fun, and I became every great player, back in the day, and hit I don't know how many game-winning shots in my own mind. Uh, but it has to be fun. Shooting has to be fun for young players. If it's not, they're probably gonna pick up another sport that they enjoy more.
All right, they'll fall out of love with it or never fall in love with it to begin with.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So it leads me to my transition to my last question, coach, is about what do you think coaches can be doing, in their practices or in their training sessions to kind of, like you said, kind of not just develop shooters, but also, make it fun for them, make it competitive, make it, game like. What are some things that you think, coaches might want to consider in order to maybe not just teach shooting always in isolation, but always, ways to make it competitive, make it fun and an enjoyable experience for the players.
Yeah, I mean, you just nailed it right there. Your drills and skills, especially your shooting, one, it needs to be very competitive. Just standing and shooting, spot shooting, that has some value, but your players need to get game like shots that out of your offense. Um, when I was a young coach at 22 years old, I learned from Coach Patterson. two or three drills because back then, yeah, everybody ran the flex. And so you had drills, coming off a back screen, you had drills coming off a down screen. And we would drill those all the time. And then we would add a player to, put up, some soft defense and get a hand up. But if you're not shooting shots that come out of your offense and you're just shooting shots to shoot shots, I don't know how much of great effectiveness that is. So, you know, I would encourage any coach to find the shots that they shoot most out of their offense. And, if you're a fast break team and you like to leak somebody out, well, then I'd be shooting some, getting kids starting from half court and go pass it ahead and make sure they can shoot a proper layup full speed. Um, or if you know you're going to get a lot of corner threes from kickouts, if you have a great post player, well, I'd have kids slide from wing to corner, catch a pass, and ready to shoot. But find those shots that you're going to get in a game situation and really execute those in practice to give them confidence to know when I get in a game, I've shot this shot 100 times in practice. I know I'm going to make this. And I think the more confidence you can give them in practice, the better shooter they're going to be in a game situation.
I think I've told this before on here, but that is an experience that I actually went through. This was a few years ago. No, I think this was before I started this podcast. This must have been 5 or 6 years ago at this point. But I was doing, some sort of drill. I forgot exactly the ins and outs of it, but this is exactly kind of what you just mentioned, where one of the either lower level coaches or assistant coaches went up to me and they're like, "Coach, when do we ever shoot that sort of shot in a game?" And I couldn't give him an answer. And we were working on something on certain types of shots or things we would just never shoot in a game. And it was eating up, a decent amount of time in this drill. And then if you were to watch a film of us play, we never shot from there. I mean, the drill looked nice. I mean, it was pretty all right for what it was, but it didn't directly translate to what we were doing in a game. And I think it was a kind of an eye-opening experience to me to try and think more about like that intentionality, like you said, is like where does this skill or where does this drill, whether it's a shooting drill or anything, like where does it transfer to what we're actually doing on the court? And kind of ashamed to admit, maybe it took me a few years to finally put all those pieces together, but better late than never, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, every drill that you do in practice, offensively, defensively, has to come out of the flow of what you
Mm,
do on game night. Um, for example, Tiger Ball, they play fast. They go 5 in, 5 out about every minute to a minute and a half. They're playing 17 girls a night. And so when they do drills, and I mean, coaches got them moving, got them flying, and they're quick. If they're competing, they're going to 2 or 3 points. They're getting in, they're getting out. Coach has guys come into practice against them. So they're always practicing at game speed. And because if you don't, when you get in a game, if you're just doing a drill just to do a drill and it's not game speed, you're not going to be ready for game time, especially when it comes to shooting.
yeah, no, 100% agree. And I think, I get the sense too, just to kind of add on to what it is you said, I definitely get the sense that the girls that you're working with and the ones at Olivet are also a real competitive bunch. And I imagine any sort of competition they can get to, go after each other and have a winner and a loser and something like that. They probably love doing it and have a lot of fun with it, and they just like competing. So incorporating those elements into it, I imagine is a big positive for the program and how much they enjoy doing that sort of thing.
Well, I'll end with this on that note
Hmm.
is they do love to compete, and I love watching them compete. The more competitive they are, the more fun I have watching them. But they always finish a drill, especially a 5-on-5 against each other drill, by somebody who won the drill, the team who won the drill. Somebody's got to step to the line and make 2 free throws to actually solidify the win. If they don't make 2 free throws, both teams are running down and back. So it just takes that competitiveness. You don't win that. You may have won the drill, but you don't win the drill until somebody hits 2 free throws in a row. So again, game situation, you
Yeah.
just worked your tail off for about 2 minutes. Um, so solidify the drill by knocking down 2 free throws. So you just stay in that toughness mental mode of finishing strong.
Yeah, I love that. That's a real cool note. I'm gonna jot that one down and ruminate over that. I think that'd be a real cool element to add to drills. Awesome. Coach,
Yeah.
to wrap up, there's a couple questions I ask every guest, so I'll just jump right in and start with this first one, which is thinking back on your coaching career. I know you've had a lot of moments and a lot of memorable experiences along the way, but what is a particular coaching moment of yours that you can share with us that you think by sharing it, our listeners would be able to learn from?
Yeah, when I reread that question again today, coach, and as a young coach, I I mean, I've always believed in my players. And I had a game and a situation where um, we were playing against a better opponent, and we were down, I think, 2 points. And I diagrammed a play for my best player to get a three, and and I knew he could make it, but when I looked at him, he just had this look like he was scared to death, like deer in the headlights. And I had this other kid who you never knew what he was gonna do. I mean, but what he was gonna do is gonna be done really hard. And this kid looked at me and said, "Coach, I can make that." And I stuck with my original plan and had my best player shoot the shot, even though when I looked at him, I thought, "He doesn't think he can make this." But I thought he could make it. We go out, we execute the play to perfection. Kid shoots the shot, doesn't go in. And I told myself, I am never going to do that again. I'm going to look at the kid in the eye. If I don't think he can make it, I'm going to look at the kid who's staring me in the eyes with that fiery look that says, I'm going to win this game for us, coach. And I've had games past that where I've done that very thing and it turned out well. So, that's something I had to learn the hard way of, you may think you have the great play and that you think the kid is going to hit it, but make sure that you look in their eyes and see what they got at that moment. Because if they give you the body language and if they're not making eye contact with you, I would draw something up for somebody else pretty quick.
Well, how perfectly that kind of translates to what we talked about earlier, right? About player confidence, and you can see it in their body language when they shoot, whether or not they're gonna have a better chance of going in or not. And it ties in perfectly. But yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point. That player's got to be believe that they're ready for that moment and ready to shoot. So tying it back into what we talked about, hopefully, if we're getting our shooters a bunch of good game like reps, and they're putting in all the work, hopefully when their time comes they're ready and confident and everybody's ready to take that shot, right?
Absolutely.
To wrap up, coach, I kind of give what I like to call this 60-second soapbox. You can go over 60 seconds. I just like to put a fancy title on things, but I like to use it, kind of, coach, as a way to give you kind of a final message, a final thought, a closing idea, something that you want to just kind of leave the listeners with. You can take it any direction you want, basketball wise or coaching wise, because it is your soapbox after all. So, coach, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of turn over the floor once more to you and let you take it from here.
Yeah, I thought a lot about this opportunity, and I really appreciate you having me on the show. And one of the things that we haven't talked about that as much as I love basketball and as much as I love shooting and talking about shooting, there's something even more important to me than that is, and that's my faith in Jesus Christ. Now I know not everybody believes what I believe and having faith in Christ, but it's important to me as a coach that I always convey my faith to the players that I get an opportunity to work with. I don't preach at them. But I pour into them and I encourage them in a way that when they see me and when they have the opportunity to work with me, I want them to say, hey, there's something different about Jerry J and how he goes about his coaching, and how he encourages me and how he cares about me more as a person than he does as a player. And that's always been something that's been important to me. I had a high school coach that for 2 years I thought my name was Effin Johnson, because he just, that's all I heard. And I vowed when I had the opportunity to coach that I wasn't going to be that way. And I've had my moments where it's been tough and you treated kids probably poorly than you wanted to. But, now one of the other parts of my role too, coach, is that every Monday, we've created this graphic that we call Monday Morning Motivation. And we put a picture of usually one of the coaches or the players in the graphic. And then I usually put a Bible verse or an encouraging quote that each player, each coach, and now each player who's committed to the program gets every Monday. I try to get them out before 10 o'clock so they can start their day with something positive. But um, encouragement goes a long way when it comes to sports. And I feel God has given me the ability to be a strong encourager, and I want to use that skill to bless others. So, for coaches who have a hard time encouraging, uh, try to find a way each day to encourage your kids, because at the end of the day, they're just kids and they want to do well, but help them become better people as much as you do basketball players.
Awesome. Really well said. I love that idea of, players leaving, excited each day, whether it's, something to motivate them, a positive message, whether it's faith-based or otherwise, that, the players leaving the gym, just heads up high and excited versus, you know, maybe so stressed out or anxious, but they have that little bit of motivation and that continued positivity. I think that's awesome. And Coach, I just want to again thank you for coming on here and being willing to talk about, your journey, talking about, free throws, shooting, the positivity that you just shared there at the end. I really appreciate it. Love this chat. Love this conversation. I got a lot of great ideas, and our listeners did as well. And really excited just to see the numbers that Olivet are going to continue to put up here. I know you just mentioned at the beginning about the in the 120s. I'm looking forward to see what some of those box scores and stat sheets look like, especially from the free throw line. So, Coach, again, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if anybody wants to catch a game with Olivet, go to ONUtigers.com and you can see basketball played in a totally different way, but it's fun and exciting.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.